What is going on, everybody, and welcome in to another edition of Huskers Live. I think it's 218. I just put that number on the title line, so we're going to go with 218 for now. We're going to pretend this is episode number 218. Y'all can verify that for me, but we are in the process now of getting into some practices. So football is finally happening again to an extent. Again, very small portions of it. We're not figuring out much of anything other than, as Matt Rule said, who can play, right? But we're going to get into some of the stuff today from the press conferences, a little bit of the spring practice, kind of breakdown of what everything's going on, what they're looking for, what all the staff changes, is going to lead to, and how this is going to be structured, along with some revenue sharing stuff, secondary stuff. Talked a little bit about the running back room, the D line, a lot of the stuff we've been talking about. We got, a little bit of maybe not answers to, but at least some questions asked on it. But as always, here to bring everything home with me, Brian Moore. Brian, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing well. How are you, sir?
Fantastic. Ready to get this show started and get rocking and rolling with everything. And we got a couple of controversial things to hit on. We had a basketball tweet go out over the weekend that we'll touch on. Seemed to ruffle some feathers, kick up the ant mound, if you will. Actually, you know what? Maybe we can start with that. Let me just go ahead and dive into some of these comments. First, Fongwei. Next up, the college football preview mags. Yes, sir. Mm-hmm. We had Phil Still on last year. I'll probably have Phil Still on again this year to kind of go over that stuff with you too. So what's going on, Jackson? Appreciate you hopping in here. Rashawn, appreciate you hopping in here. Great day, man. Just tapping in quick. Go Big Red. I appreciate you as always, man. Thank you for hopping in and join the show for any length of time you can. Really, really appreciate y'all, man. So yeah, let's go ahead and just dive right into the controversial tweet real quick. Let's just go ahead and get this out of the way real quick. Coronation, friend of the show. Coronation's a friend of mine, John. I'm really cool with him and Minnie. Minnie lives out here as well, so you're not going to hear any negative things about Coronation from me in terms of them as people. Any negative, calling them dumb, anything like that. None of that is going to happen from me. Let's talk about the tweet in question. And I'm going to go ahead and pull it up on the screen. That'll probably, just in case for anybody who hasn't seen it here. And it was about the state of the Nebraska basketball program. And let me just get your initial thoughts on it, Brian, here, because you can see it right there. Serious question on a Friday. How many of you really care about this? Realize Nebraska wants to compete in every sport. But is that reality in the current landscape? Why would you bother pumping money in this sport when we have so many others that are more successful? So, what's your thoughts?
He didn't convey his point very well. And I think we were talking about this earlier. I get what he was trying to say, but Nebraska just unfortunately is not going to dump in $10 million in NIL and revenue sharing for men's basketball. And so people do care. The attendance numbers is why I don't understand what the original do people care question was, because Nebraska's top 10 in attendance for the last 5, 6, 7 years.
Not a problem. Yeah.
So people clearly do care. I think the broader point he was trying to make was, do we care enough to dump in the necessary funds to have a team that can compete in the conference tournament, compete in March Madness? I think that's really what he was trying to get to, and he just didn't convey it very well.
Well, yeah, very well. Yeah, and look at it kind of like in Indiana. I mean, if you look at Indiana, their football program, maybe they're talking about, thinking about it the same way, because Indiana basketball has a lot of parallels to Nebraska football. A blue blood who's been dormant for a long, long time, but, you look at Indiana football team, I'm sure their fans probably had some of their fans and their heavy basketball fans might have had a thought like this too. Like, why do we, what do we do with this football team? Do we continue, all this other stuff? And it's worked out for them. And not saying that's going to happen for Nebraska, but I just think Nebraska has everything in place to where, it's just going to take that one season, maybe if they can get that tournament win. There's so much, even with Nebraska having no tournament wins as it is right now with the talent and caliber of players that they get just because they're Nebraska, there is something there to that gives Nebraska an innate value, even in basketball. We're the worst D1 program there is, just based on tournament wins alone. But me personally, I'm just a huge fan of just kind of Nebraska sports across the board in general. I care about basketball a lot less. It's like not even close, of course, to football, but I don't think it's to the point where it's like, I want to completely rid ourselves of the sport or just not care at all. But it is. I mean, to be fair, it's a legitimate question that I think was just kind of taken and kind of spun around in a lot of ways. Maybe it wasn't worded the best, wasn't worded the best, but that's John. John's not always the best with his words. You know what I'm saying? He's very straight, direct to the point. But so yeah, this caused a lot of stir, and I see why. I do see both sides of the point for sure. So yeah, I was really curious the people's take on that and your take on that as well. So another year.
I think we're going to find out pretty quickly here, because you got to keep in mind too, with revenue sharing, the whole landscape in particular for Nebraska is going to shift quite a bit.
Yeah.
So Nebraska originally with 1890, I'd say you're talking 80 to 85% of the funds they're receiving as donations are going to football.
Yeah.
And then the scraps are going to basketball and to volleyball and to Geordie ball for the softball team. And like, that's it. With revenue share, they're going to split $20 to $22 million from revenue share. And I would say you're looking at 14 to 17 million going to football. And then you'd get probably 3 to 4, maybe 4.5 million for basketball. So you've already you've doubled your NIL from last year just on revenue share.
Yep.
And then with the revenue that 1890 or the donations 1890 brings in, you're going to get probably another 1.5 to maybe 3 million.
Yep.
So they're going to have so much more money to play with. It's not going to be like the 10 million you see at Indiana, which they just got a $10 million donation, I believe. But it's going to be enough money where Nebraska can go out and get a guy like Price Sanford from Iowa who's visiting, and he's going to be a guy that gets 800 probably on the low end per year, 800,000. So we'll be more competitive.
Yep.
We're not going to be a team that's going to be probably a top 5 or 6 seed in the tournament, but we can get to the tournament with the funds we're going to have here in literally like 2 months.
Yeah. I think it depends on like, what are your goals like with the basketball program? Do you want them to be a national championship contender? Probably not going to happen. Do you want them to occasionally, compete and win a couple tournament games? I think that's feasible. So I do think we have the proper, leadership in place to really make sure that they're able to kind of balance everything out, equally distribute it out and kind of keep everything. So I trust the people we got in charge, but it was a legitimate question. This is why people are afraid to ask questions on Husker Twitter, because it's just like this kind of gang up on you mentality. Like one person says one thing and then everybody else just kind of jumps on the person. I try to stay out of that whole angry mob type of deal and stick to myself. But that was an interesting little discussion there. So let's go ahead and let me dive in some of the comments here, and then we got to get into wrestling too. So been a while since I've been watched live working on Tuesdays. Well, I appreciate you being here, William. Thank you so much. And if y'all don't mind dropping a like on the stream, it really, really helps us out. What's up? Never mind me. Appreciate you hopping in here. Great start, John stirring the pot. Yeah, so he's okay. Exactly. The honest answer, we don't care that much about basketball. Yeah, to be honest, I mean, I care to an extent, but at the end of the day, and if you're talking about comparison to football, it's very, very little. John was bored. Minnesota weather sucks. Speaking of weather sucking, is 99 degrees in Arizona today. Oof. Already. It was 96 yesterday, 99 today. So it is going to be a brutal summer. But William, really good point here. Wrestling did fantastic. We talked about that a little bit before the show, and we are going to dive into that. Nebraska coming away with a couple of really good performances, a couple of national champions, and what was a kind of crazy wrestling tournament. I was talking to Brian before the show about it. I know of Gable Stevenson from some of his training partners and stuff like that, and so I was locked into this mainly for that, and also because Nebraska had people in it. But Gable Stevenson was the big name that was like draw my attention to this. Of course he has trained with DC, Daniel Cormier, he was Olympic gold medalist, all this other stuff. We've all kind of seen all that stuff about it and was upset this weekend, but lost in the shuffle of that was a pretty good performance overall by Nebraska's wrestling team. I think, what was it? 3 people participated, 2 people won their classes.
Yep.
So, yeah, go ahead and were you able to check it out at all, or?
I was more following on Twitter because I
Yeah.
was watching a lot of March Madness, but
Yep.
and like what I was saying before the show too, is Nebraska's always like a really solid wrestling team with Mark Manning as the coach, but the Iowas, the Oklahoma States, the Penn States, like the traditional powers outside of Penn State, the fact that we went in and we outperformed all those traditional powers is absolutely an incredible feat for Nebraska wrestling. It's the best men's sports team right now, like not even close.
Yep. So it says most team points and All-Americans at the NCAA championships for the best team finish in program history, finishing second. Penn State ran away with it with 170, I think it was 170 or 177 points, which is insane. Just casually dominating, I think, top 3 in all of the categories that they had somebody in. So, but just an overall really, really good day for Nebraska's wrestling. Mark Manning, yeah, of course, can't say enough about him. Luckily, he got a lot of attention for this and a lot of talk over the weekend. Well deserved. So, yeah, really good performance overall there for Nebraska's wrestling team. So it's good to see some good come out of that. And yeah, man, just continuously seeing the improvement of the athletic department as a whole. I feel like the athletic department right now is in a better place than I've seen it in a long time. I don't know your feeling on that. Do you agree?
Athletic department's been really down for a really long time. So
yes, yeah,
you can see that things for the most part are heading in a relatively positive direction. I'd say volleyball is going to keep doing their thing. Women's basketball, back-to-back tournament appearances. Amy Williams is doing a phenomenal job. Softball, phenomenal. Baseball is really struggling. It's really just the men's sports actually that are really struggling. But at least with Nebraska football, you're seeing them start to kind of elevate, not only just with wins, but also with their presence, with getting top recruits, top transfers. Everything's starting to elevate. They just need to keep stacking days, basically.
Without a doubt. And William, yeah, we had Tyson on the show, what, 3 weeks ago? 2 weeks ago?
I think it's 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
I made him and Caden Vermas.
I made this picture for him right here. There's Tyson with his wrestling championships. No, but yeah, it was a pretty good interview. Fun interview with those guys. So they stayed basically for the entire hour with us. So if y'all didn't get a chance to go check that out, you might want to peek back through and check that out. But yeah, Tyson was a great interview there too. But I'll have to go check that one out with Carricker. John does an inside a mob every month or 2. We send the cops for a wellness check. If it's about money instead of finding talented players, that still puts Nebraska at the bottom tier. Why pay for a losing team?
Well, you could not pay, and then you could go 0-30 every year.
True. True, which would be a lot more. Which would be a lot more painful.
Yeah.
I saw that on my way here. Adair, I have to catch that later. The kid is going to rock our D line without a doubt. Yeah, him and Caden. I mean, first off, them two, you can tell that they get along very, very well, and just excited about the future of a lot of these young guys that we've talked to on the show, especially because they've been great interviews, and I can definitely see why the staff is kind of in on some of these kids. But Tyson Terry is going to be an absolute monster without a doubt.
Yeah, you can see like a trend with these guys that we have interviewed, like just culture fit.
Yeah,
like they all fit the culture. They all have this very positive energy about them. I've really enjoyed interviewing these guys. Tanner Church had some great stories too, and we interviewed him as well.
Yep, we got a lot more of that stuff coming for y'all. Over the next few weeks, the off season, and so on and so forth. So let's go ahead and talk some football. First things first. We were just talking about the D line. A little bit. Would you want to just go ahead and put out a couple of details about the recruiting aspect of the D line and what we got coming up?
Yeah, Nebraska has their top 2 defensive linemen coming in, top 2 overall, regardless of position on the defensive line. Valdon Sohn is coming in. Right now he's a really high 4-star in all major services. He's probably going to be a potentially top 100, maybe a top 150 guy once the re-ranking comes out, and he'll be like a consensus top 150 guy. He's an absolute freak, huge defensive tackle. He's like 6'3", 6'4", 298, I think right now. And then Titan Davis is coming in as well. Nebraska's number one target at defensive end. Huge time or big time player. 6'5", I think he's like 260 right now. And this kid's a junior in high school. I mean, these guys are absolute monsters. And he's a consensus top 100 recruit as well. Titan and Valden are going to be here this weekend catching some practices.
Yep. And just want to give a big shout out to Brian for work he's done on the recruiting spreadsheet. He's got a spreadsheet going full board, defensive and offensive, going to be kicking up here. I think you got the defensive one.
I got the offensive done.
Our offensive
already.
One done. The
defense I'll probably have done in a week or two.
Yep. So stay tuned for the recruiting news, but shout out to Brian on that. We got a lot of good stuff coming for y'all on the recruiting side of things as it ramps up here in the next coming weeks as well. So, all right, let's go ahead and let's just talk about kind of what they talked about in their press conferences and stuff like that, and go over, kind of our takeaways from what we were able to see. But I think the biggest thing here, let's just go ahead and talk about kind of what the process is. 15 practices. And I think the first 2 are in helmets. They if they have former players come and talk, I think that has to count as a practice. I think he said something along those lines. But first 2 in helmets, and they kind of asked what they're looking for. He wants to see the people come back in shape, come back from spring break in shape. Kind of talked about this as kind of a classroom introduction to a lot of the stuff that they're going to be doing on the grass, installation, teaching, no depth charts being kind of set right now. Like I mentioned in the beginning of the show, it's who can play, not necessarily who is going to play right now, that they're trying to differentiate. So effort, execution, just kind of looking for those details right now in this thing. So what was your thoughts on the process here? Was there anything that stood out to you or anything that I missed in terms of how this is going to work?
Coach Rule finally clarified that he was not saying Raiola was
240
pounds.
Yeah, I was going to talk about that.
For some reason got spun out way too much.
And I think we talked about that. We talked about like there's no way he's 240.
Yeah.
Like me and you were.
Go ahead.
No, I was just saying, me and you were even looking at him. We're like, there's no way that kid is 240 pounds.
Yeah. And then like you see like the winter conditioning videos and the pictures they all post. I'm like, yeah, there's no, like 220, maybe 230, but 240, no.
230 would have even been pushing it, but that was like 220, 220.
Yeah. Coach Rule talked about saying that the offense is going to be similar to what they ran versus Boston College, which I found interesting because in a press conference like a couple weeks ago, I believe, he said it's going to be similar to last year. Yeah. So people. Well,
let's go ahead and dive into that because the first thing I want to get into on this was Dana and talking about the offense. So go ahead.
Well, I think both you and I were talking, and this was maybe last week's live or 2 weeks ago. We were both like, "There's no way it's the same as what Satterfield was running." So I'm glad we got the clarification that it's going to be more of what Boston College game plan was, which I have no issues with. Quick passing game, take some deep shots. The one thing I found interesting, I found a little stat about Emmett Johnson. In the 4 games that he was the starter under Holgerson, he averaged 22 touches a game.
Nice.
Which is a lot.
I would love to have a guy.
I think he's going to be a bell cow running back in terms of just getting like probably 15 to 20, 21, 22 touches a game. And then they're going to have like 1 or 2 guys that kind of spell them. I think that's what they're going to do.
That's what it sounded like. Because even, when talking through the offense, first off, Matt Rule was talking about how Dana was very particular in like what he wants. So, and of course, Dana loves Emmett. But like Emmett on Holgerson, when he was talking about Dana Holgerson, when Emmett Johnson was, he said, it's about the routine plays, getting reps. And he said he makes their jobs as running backs like that much easier. Emmett said his goal, he doesn't want to just run the ball. He wants to line up in the slot. Like he wants to do everything that the team needs of him to be successful. And you're going to get the ball in your hand 20 plus times, if you're lining up the slot, if you're lining up the backfield. So yeah, it's just looking like Emmett is going to be without a doubt just a huge part of this offense with the rest of the guys kind of being complementary, pieces there to go along with it. And, we'll touch on the running back room here a little bit too, because they talked on that after Emmett. But they talked about the confidence that they have in the running back room, and I think that mainly has a lot to do with Emmett. We've talked about the depth being an issue. Do we think they're going to go after running back in the portal, the spring portal or anything like that? It doesn't sound like that's necessarily in the plan at all.
Yeah, I don't think they're going after a running back. I think they really like what they have. Coach Rule continues to speak very highly of Quentin Ives. I believe he gave Mekhi Nelson a shout out as well about his development. I think they really like those three as the top three guys at running back, and then Jamarian Parker as a guy that could see some snaps as well.
Yeah, because he did mention, and Mekhi, shout out to Mekhi Nelson, his dad checks out the live stream from time to time. He's in here a lot. So, but yeah, Mekhi talked about his explosiveness, his speed, and all those things. So it's one of those things. I think if Mekhi's dad's still in here, I'm not sure. He was in here a little bit ago, but because I was pronouncing his name wrong. So about 3 months ago, I pronounced his name wrong. So I'm glad we're getting that right at least. But I'm glad he's getting talked about in the press conferences. But yeah, it's one of those things where he's just talked about his explosiveness, his ability to move. And I think a lot of those things, like we look at, what is it, Maurice Mazuka, Micah's brother from last season, right? We have some of these guys like those guys, right? That are unsung heroes that the staff knows about that we don't necessarily know about, that, we hear them talk about. And it's like, we do have these guys that are dudes on this depth chart. You look at, Mekhi's film and stuff like that. You look at Jamarian Parker's film, like Mekhi has the experience. Jamarian Parker, they said, was 170 something pounds when he came on and got up to like 190 something. Right. So
it's a lot of weight.
So like, yeah, it is. And so they talked about, they want every single one of these guys to be able to catch the ball. So you got, Mekhi who can catch and run. You got Jamarian who can catch and run. You got Ives who can catch and run, but probably not as good as those other guys in terms of catching, but he can. And
we saw what Emmett could do last year too.
Yeah, Matt talked highly on kind of Ives' ability, just saying he hasn't really gotten the opportunity to show. Yeah. And me, I'm kind of an Ives guy. I just want to see him succeed. So it was good to hear that, but it's good to hear the confidence that they have, and that guys like Mekhi and some of these other guys that are on the depth chart will potentially get a look. That is one of the benefits here, because it's not necessarily like we're going to go to the portal, get a guy, and he's going to immediately come in and be able to outperform. It's not a sure thing that these guys even out of the portal are going to come in and be able to do so. If Matt Rule trusts one of these these guys that hasn't gotten an opportunity more, I trust his ability on that. And I don't think he's making that up because they didn't offer a single running back in the winter portal. That's what I was thinking. I was like, if they weren't confident in this running back room, they would have offered somebody.
Yeah, they offered somebody from like UL Monroe.
Yeah, but that was before. That was when Emmett was leaving. Yeah,
that was when Emmett left. And then once Emmett came back, they just shut it down.
They nixed it.
Yeah. And one thing too, Coach Rule said Mekhi was dynamically talented. That was his quote. And people too, like they see when they're like looking at a recruit, they see how little or how many offers someone has.
Yes.
Mekhi is kind of the exception to this rule, because Mekhi was originally a class of 2023 recruit, I believe.
I think it was 23, yeah.
And then he went to a prep school was going to go to a prep school for a year.
Yes. And
then I think he did a year, or like before the year started, that's when he was like, I can still go to college somewhere now. And that's when Nebraska came in. His dad said they came in and camped at Nebraska. He crushed it. They offered him, and then they were going up to Michigan, and he won 2 Under Armour All-American camps. Like a lot of accolades for a guy that he just didn't have the offers because his recruitment was kind of, I'm trying to find the term, but just not your normal recruitment, I guess you could say. It's just a little off kilter.
Yeah.
And that's just, kind of a guy falling through the cracks that Nebraska luckily found.
Yeah. He played at like prep school. I believe it was Connecticut, I think it was. And then played in Pennsylvania for a little bit, but he had over 2,000 yards rushing. In his junior season, he had upwards of like, I think between 1,700, something like that, yards rushing, like over 20 touchdowns, averaged a crazy amount per carry. I can't remember the stats off the top of my head. But just produced, sophomore, junior, like was just absolutely produced it everywhere he went, every single step of the way. And I think, I think Pennsylvania was the last stop that he was at. If you can confirm that for me, I don't remember if it was the,
it says Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania.
Yeah. So, and he's a kid. He's 6 foot, probably like $190.
Yeah,
I think maybe
Huskers.com has him at 185, but
yeah.
that's not an updated weight.
So yeah, roughly maybe 190, 200 pounds, something like that. So yeah, I do think, we may have something there in him, and his dad was very confident in him, of course, and I'm excited to see him now. Like I
got
really
his high school stats too here for you.
They're pretty crazy.
Yeah.
They're
Keep in
pretty
mind, so Pennsylvania is like a powerhouse too. Like as a state, they funnel so much D1
Yes.
like elite talent. So senior year, 2,200 yards rushing. Junior year, 1,700 yards, 22 touchdowns, average almost 8 yards per carry, and over 150 yards a game as a junior. 8 100-yard rushing games. In his sophomore season, he had 600 yards and 9 touchdowns. He had 23. He also caught 23 passes for 500 yards and 3 touchdowns.
Yeah, crazy. Yeah, he's a stud. He's a stud, and it's one of those things where I feel like if they don't have the big name, like out of the recruiting, the 4 or 5 stars, maybe we kind of almost kind of brain dump it a little bit. But looking back at it, it's one of those things where if you look at kind of like you said, it was just a very unorthodox recruiting process. And so I do think this running back room has the potential to be. It's just very young, very inexperienced. Emmett, he's a junior, and then we have Quentin Ives, who's a sophomore, I believe. But outside of that, do we have any other upperclassmen? I don't think so.
Well, we had a walk-on, Rowdy Bowers, but they just announced today that he moved. Yep. So, I mean, the opportunity is right in front of every single one of these guys, whether it's Parker, Ives, Nelson, even Connor Booth when he comes back. The opportunity to get on the field is there.
Yep.
We're going to find out real quick how good this running back room is.
Absolutely. Let's get into some of the comments. Pit Snipe, I like that Terry said he's going to focus on football and no wrestling. I do too. Yeah, even though he said they want him on that wrestling team, but I wouldn't say Vegas is expecting exceptional things. The football program's win total I've seen is 7.5. Well, Vegas tends to be pretty conservative with their over/under win totals. So,
especially right now.
Well, yeah. So I think what we're at like 6.5 last year, but yeah, those tend to be very, very not very aggressive in terms of that. I like this attitude that our staff is bringing. I 100% agree. It's just this physicality, this effort. Like we're gonna outwork you. And Matt Rule kind of talked about what he thinks separates Nebraska from the rest of the schools, and we'll dive into that in a second. I think they have a long streak of going under the win total. Yep. We ever figure out how to not beat ourselves, we could be in the Big Ten championship, the playoffs. We'd win the Natty if we can not beat ourselves. Fair enough. I'm a homer for sure. The team blazes the non-con. That line will move. The performance against Michigan really tells where we're at. Agreed. Especially if Bryce Underwood is starting that Michigan game. Underwood versus Raiola would be nuts.
Luckily, we get them early too.
Yeah, week 4, I think.
Yeah.
Rule did say Jaden Doss is back at wide receiver as well. Yeah, appreciate you pointing that out, Mike. Thank you. So Jaden Doss is back over at wide receiver. I've been waiting for Emmett since he stepped on campus. Yeah, without a doubt. I'm expecting game number 1 against Cincy to not be easy. Definitely will not. Any opening game against a decent opponent is never going to be easy. Even some of our opening games against Cupcakes have not been easy in recent years. So, who is Kenneth that coach mentioned?
Kenneth Walker, the running back.
Oh, KW3. You talking about?
Yeah, he had a big kick return in the bowl game, and I literally had to Google the roster because I was like, "Who the heck is 25 with these long dreadlocks?"
Yeah. Kenneth Walker. Rule left the door open for getting a running back in the portal, though. I think if the right blocking, catching body, he left the door open. I think if the right fit, if they see the right fit, like person enter, I just don't think they're necessarily going to go searching. I think it's one of those things where, so that's a good point, Pit Snipe. Yeah, I think more so what I was saying is that they're not going to go searching for somebody. They don't feel like they have to go get somebody, but if the right fit's there, yeah, for sure they'll try to go after him. Ives looked decent in the bowl game for getting his first touches. Agreed. He's a good runner, big dude. Just want to see him get an opportunity. I think everybody's happier if Ives steps it up a notch this spring, so no portal running back is necessary. Yeah, agreed. Rule shouts out Ives every other time running back comes up. It's almost odd we didn't see more of him last year. Holt shouts out Ives too. That really wasn't Rule was kind of doing. That was more so, Satterfield again. He had control of that offense. So, but yeah, I wish we could have seen him show more to get on the field in the first couple of years. That would have gave us a lot more confidence in him, because I remember that being a little bit about your hesitation with Ives.
Yep. A lot of that too is the coaches will use the press conferences to speak to a player.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like, they're going to pump him up in the press conference because they want him to know, like, not only do I tell you this privately, but I am publicly telling the world that you are a good player. And that is just a way to kind of get them some confidence.
And one of the things we know about Rules, he doesn't just say that to say that. Like, there's always the one time he said that about, oh my gosh, who was it last year that transferred away, that he kind of the surprising defensive transfer last year. I don't know, I'm drawing a blank at his name, but he kind of lifted him up. Chief Borders. I think it was Chief Borders, where he's lifting him up the press conference to kind of raise his value in the NIL to help him, So there's a method to his madness. So usually he doesn't just say stuff to say, just like prop a player up just because. He's not going to go up there and talk good about a player if he hasn't earned it. So that is a good aspect of that. But talking about Raiola, let's go talk about a little bit more about the offense and Raiola. We talked about him being 240, not being 240 rather. And then, it talked about the reason why he likes the bigger quarterback, durable, not to get knocked down in the pocket. He said he had a good offseason, threw at the pro day, and that, he's just working on. It looks in shape. I saw the picture. You saw the picture earlier. He looks in incredible shape. Looks to be in great shape. He talked about him being at the right weight that he wants to be at. It looks like he's at that or got to be around there, because he's not, like, he looks pretty solid, pretty stacked, not holding a lot of excess, body fat or anything like that. I would say he's probably in that slim 215 kind of range right now.
Yeah. And that's like one thing too. Marcos Davia is also a big quarterback.
Yes,
6'3", 230 or so. Yeah. They're like the same exact build. It's very interesting, actually.
Yeah. Davia's very stocky. So let's see.
One thing too is, Coach Rule said that Raiola has been really, really focused on his strength and conditioning, which I think he kind of realized, like, he can't be, he was not overweight last year, but he was not the right weight to be that mobile, nimble quarterback that can go and get you 5 yards when you need it. So I think that's kind of what he was alluding to, was he's kind of changing his physique a little bit to be able to go get you that 2 or 3 yards when you need it.
Yeah, it's the nature of the beast. It's like, it's not necessarily that he was out of shape to play quarterback. He was in shape, right? But we got a new offensive coordinator. We got a different look of how we want to run things, and they want him to be able to move that pot. I mean, in modern college football, I feel like you have to have the ability, in modern football in general, to be able to move the pocket. You have to have a quarterback that can, at the very least, move the pocket, swing it right, swing it left, and escape and get 2 or 3 yards, 2, 3, 4 yards where needed, especially in an offense like Holgerson's, where it's just like, take what the defense gives you. Let's get our yards quickly. It's more so of that. Yeah. And that 10 pounds, that's a huge difference when it comes to how you feel as an athlete and how you feel in your movement. It's a big 10 pounds, is a lot.
Yeah. One thing too, like, I think back to that play on the final drive of the game against Boston College, where they ran this RPO play where it was either a dive to, I believe, Emmett, and then he rolled out to the right, and then he either can keep it, or he had a tight end in the flat, and then he had another tight end coming across the middle late, and he chose to keep it. I don't think he got the first, because the next play was at 4th and 1 that Ramir got, but being able to at least run that play and get you 2 or 3 yards to make that 4th down a lot more manageable than 4th and 5 potentially is all we need him to do. Yeah.
Because I mean, third and 6 and shorter is way different than 3rd and 7 and longer. It changes your whole playbook. So those 2-3 yards make a whole world of difference. He was in shape of a potato. He was in good enough shape to play quarterback. Like he was in shape to do what they needed him to do, which is like, they wanted that big body guy, push the ball down the field, through the wind and stuff like that. It's just just tightening it up. But we'll talk a little about the strength and conditioning that you talked about earlier. Mike, thank you again, man. Another super chat, $5. Appreciate you, brother. No one will ever be able to replace Greg Sharp. With that being said, who will be the next voice of the Huskers? That is a great question.
I guess would be what's his name, Ben McLaughlin, the guy that was his right-hand man for baseball.
Yeah.
Who's doing baseball now? That would be my guess, but
I feel like that'd be a nice pass over. But yeah,
I have no idea.
Definitely nobody will be able to replace Greg. It's definitely not going to be the same. That is for sure. So but I appreciate the 5, man. Thank you, Mike. Appreciate that. Watch Larry the Cable Guy.
No.
All right. Let's go ahead and dive a little into the secondary. Talking about the secondary, he talked about when Snow came over, talked about the fast, long, athletic secondary guys. Now, when he was talking overall about the secondary, it seemed to me like he's not like fully like 100% confident, almost like he's waiting on somebody to step up or a few players to step up and give him that confidence. Is that kind of how you felt when he was talking through that?
Yeah, his quote too was basically saying that, but just in a more press conference type way. He said, I got the quote here, just need to make the most of their opportunities and they're going to get them. It's a lot of guys that you don't know what you have, unfortunately, outside of Malcolm Hartzog, Syer Wright, Deshaun Singleton, who they're moving around. They're probably going to change him from safety to rover. And then
he said,
that's it.
He said Deshaun, they're still moving around. Hartzog, they said he sees him as a nickel, like he will be a nickel in the NFL, but wants him to play field safety in the slot. So yeah, that's what they'll be doing with Hartzog. But yeah, outside of that, just not really. Yeah, we know we have Sierra, we know we have a couple of those guys, but rest of that room, it looks like it's prime opportunity for somebody to kind of make a name for themselves if they can, step up, prove yourself.
When I did the defensive breakdown going into spring, when I was kind of writing my notes up for the defensive backs, corners, safeties, it was really hard for me because like outside of Syer and I think Singleton and Buford, you really don't have much. And even then, we don't know for sure that Buford's moving back to safety. He said he's playing safety right now, but if you have, say, if Blyhill is your number 2 corner on the opposite side of right, then if he gets hurt, do you trust whoever his backup is, or do you say, hey, Buford, you got to go back down to corner, and then you now have an opening in the safety spot? There's a lot of guys that are kind of in this, no man's land of they either need to step up or they're going to get kind of left behind. They spoke very highly of Donovan Jones, though. That guy can play everywhere.
Yes. Yeah, Donovan Jones is definitely going to be a player on this defense for sure. So yeah, that bowl game was not the last we're going to see of Donovan Jones at all. Mike, can we please get some linebackers and safeties that have even average speed? Seeing Gifford and company get outran, every play was getting old. Luckily, Gifford's gone. I say that with all due respect to Gifford in terms of just him getting beat in that deep safety spot. But I feel like overall, our linebacker speed is probably improved.
I think our linebacker speed and our secondary speed have both substantially improved. Like head and shoulders better than anything we had at any point last year.
Addition by subtraction in a lot of ways. Yeah.
And Desam McCullough is probably going to be a guy that come combine time next year is running 4.5.
Yes.
Maybe like a 4.6 low end or high end.
Quick. He is very, very quick. So I do think the speed is fine. I think the speed is there. It's just been a matter of and I think we kind of knew that last year, that it was going to be a matter of kind of getting some of these older guys, out of here, letting these younger guys kind of step up, and some of these guys that Matt Rule's recruited with this speed, with the specifics for this defense. Because you got to think too, we weren't running a 3-3-5 before, and a 3-3-5 is just a faster style of defense, and those players weren't recruited for a 3-3-5. It's a defense designed to keep up spread offenses, and so it's a lot more faster, spread them out type of, replace that D lineman with an extra defensive back and kind of get that speed going. But a lot of those guys weren't recruited for that defense. So now we're getting these guys in here recruited specifically for the 3-3-5, 4-2-5, those styles of defense, to kind of get that speed and match that speed. So I think we'll be feeling much better about the speed this year.
Okay.
Some athletic department intern is in the audience going to steal that idea and ring Larry up. Sorry to put that in the universe. No, listen. Listen, go ahead.
I want to say one thing too, like we worry about Nebraska's interior defensive line depth. If there was one reason to like maybe not be as worried, is they have increased the athleticism at the second and third level, the speed, the physicality, the size so much that maybe not having, 2 or 3 guys on the inside that are 290 to 310 hurts you as bad because your linebackers and your safeties are so big and physical and fast.
Yeah. And I'm talking about the D line. It's Matt Rule seems to kind of, at least maybe he's trying to instill confidence into himself or us in this D line and how it currently sits. Talks about the young guys getting their opportunity. Elijah Judy went from 270 to 300. He mentioned that. Ty Robinson, believes Cam Lenhart, Elijah Judy, Riley Van Poppel, will replace him. Nash Jamari be the leaders on the D line. Like those type of things. It's just like the interior D line. Like I don't understand. I just don't. Maybe they're seeing something I don't. I'm not. I don't know if it's false confidence or if he's just kind of, a little bit concerned about it too, but maybe one to address it this offseason. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, they're going to have to get a guy from the portal. When we were offline, I was like, Stanford just can their coach. Maybe they got a good defensive lineman. Yeah. Because really, like, even if you go with like more of a 4-man front to get bigger, like you could slide like Williams Dewarney inside with Elijah Judy and then put RVP on the outside, or RVP on the inside and Williams Dewarney and Cam Lenhart or Keona Davis on the outside, just to get more beef. It won't be 2 guys that are 310, but you'll get a guy that's 300 and a guy that's 295 and a guy that's 270. At least it helps.
You need a disruptor. Yeah, you just need a disruptor. It's going to be taking on numbers.
Yeah, and Dylan Parrott's going to be thrusted into a role, I think. If we don't get a legit player in the spring portal and the options are going to be very limited, Dylan Parrott is going to be playing a lot of snaps because he is a monster, 6'5", 315. He's your only true defensive tackle outside of Elijah Judy.
Correct. Yeah. And when he was kind of talking about the D-line too, a little bit of what he talked about was the kind of the overall, how they feel like they're going to be with what's going to set Nebraska apart from the rest of the schools. They talk about the revenue sharing too and stuff like that. Talking about, when you're not able to just stockpile money and you have to give a certain amount to X amount of people, or, this player gets 500,000, or like, how are those teams then going to win? First off, he talked about how Pat Stewart is invaluable for like kind of figuring that process out, who was the GM, of course. But whoever figures it out the best is the teams that are going to win. And so, he's talking about they have a commitment to Nebraska to sports science, nutrition, recovery, the weight room. And like, that's what's going to set Nebraska apart from the rest. And then we get the Rocco Spindler quote. I'll go ahead and bring this up too. I'm sure that a lot of people saw this one here, but the Rocco Spindler quote here, let me pull this up. Came up, Spindler's leader for Nebraska's miss on the offensive line, the offensive team. I heard Spindler has told the team that Nebraska is more talented right now than Notre Dame was last season. That same Fighting Irish team went to the college football championship. Spindler believes that the Huskers have to believe in their abilities, and that is what's going to get them over the hump. That's some words right there.
That's what he should say.
Some serious words right there.
Would be concerned if he came out and was like, yeah, this team's not very good, right?
Yeah.
It's no different than when James Williams was saying like, oh yeah, the talent here at Florida State's so much better than it was in Nebraska. For one, no, it's not, but you have to say that about your new school.
Exactly. I agree. Exactly. Nebraska obviously does not have near the depth that they have, especially on the defensive line.
Yeah.
But I do think there's some truth into what he sees at Nebraska as being I think he sees that Nebraska can be that, like potentially. I think that he sees Nebraska's closer than a lot of us think they are, at least from what he sees on the inside. Now, will that translate to the field? We'll see. Yeah. But that is a good sign when you have a guy coming from a high level school like that. But with the nutrition, recovery, the weight room, and all that stuff, I do think that with Nebraska's facilities the way they are right now, that has to be their built-in advantage and use that to the best of their ability, because we've heard time and time again from players from that have gone to visit Ohio State, Texas, the schools with the biggest money, that Nebraska's facilities are leaps and bounds ahead of those.
Yep.
So
they better be for how much we paid for them. Jeez.
It's a lot of money.
Yeah.
It's a lot of money in there. And then when talking about the revenue sharing and the third party NIL, with that, kind of, do you know any insight into like how that is? It going to be like a salary cap type of deal? Like when he was talking about like not being able to stockpile money, you got 16 million to spread out. Is that like going to be a salary cap type of thing?
Essentially, what they're going to do is at some point they're very likely going to have like a collective bargaining agreement of some kind. A players
CBA
union.
for sure. Yep.
And that's going to essentially put like a cap limit on each team. But on top of that, the third party NIL, so like 1890, right? So if I'm 1890 and I'm coming to you and you're the player, and I say, hey, I got this dealership that wants you to come do an autograph signing, they're going to pay you $5,000. They have to submit this to the clearinghouse to get approved, because anything over $600 through a third party NIL collective now has to be audited and approved by a clearinghouse. So it's going to slow down this overspending. More than likely, at least that's the theory, right? Like, because, and it's nothing against Rocco Spindler, but like Nebraska's probably paying him over $1 million, and they're probably paying him almost more than what they're paying Elijah Pritchett. And that's a lot for an interior offensive lineman. And so I think that's the whole purpose of it, is it's to slow down this overspending of players and in theory, kind of help manage your money.
Yeah, and kind of level everything out, because we knew there was going to be some kind of CBA. We knew there was going to be some kind of collective bargaining agreement, because the way it was going, it was the way it transpired, how much money was being thrown around in such a short amount of time.
Yeah,
it was. I mean, players are going to start getting paid more in college than the NFL at a certain point at the rate that was going.
I mean, Carson Beck, was he making like $6 million?
Something like that.
He probably projected as like a 3rd to 5th round QB. I mean, he started as potentially first, but realistically 3rd to 5th round QB. He's making more at Miami right now. I would stay. It makes sense to stay.
Exactly. Our defensive backfield could be really good. I agree. They can be really good. We just need somebody to step up. Don't forget the big. Oh, I have not.
Yeah,
I have not. Yeah. I've talked about him like 4 or 5 weeks in a row, baby. David Huffkins.
I spent about 15, not 15, probably about 5 minutes on my last video about David.
Me and Brian are David Huffkin fans. When he gets on the field, we are going to be the first ones posting about it.
He could be a guy that slides inside too at 6'7", 300.
Yeah, he's going to be a tough for anybody to block. Honestly, if they can if depending on how refined his skill set is, but regardless, just being that big and that explosive, that long of arms, he's going to be a tough, block for anybody. I'm okay with smaller, quicker D linemen. Other teams that use them seem to have zero issues getting pressure and such. Yeah, when you have smaller, quicker D linemen, and in a 3-3-5, typically, like we had last year, like your nose, right? You have your 0 nose and you have 2-5 techniques in a 3-3-5 usually. So your 0 nose, which would have been Nash, like Nash's job wasn't necessarily going to show up in the stat sheet, although it did in a lot of cases because he was that good. But his job was essentially to kind of just take on as many blockers have as many blockers have to focus on him as possible to take some of the stress off of the other guys and just get Nebraska numbers advantage defensively. You don't necessarily have to be a massive D lineman to make that work. If you be on the inside, you can be creative and just, use your pass rush skills, be able to draw those doubles, but you just got to be able to make sure that you can take on numbers, no matter the size you are. But if you can take on numbers and make more people have to come block you, then you'll be fine. Yep. That's the trick, though. So
there's a comment from Mike. Do you care if I pull it up real quick?
No, go ahead.
Do these players pay taxes?
Oops, my bad. On this money.
So this is what makes Nebraska's. I love NIL too. So this is something I read a lot about. The thing that makes Nebraska's NIL collective different from every single collective in the country is it is backed by the Pede family, who owns a multitude of companies, but I forget the company, that the big one that they own. I'm drawing a blank on it. But they have tax services within that company, and then they have financial advisors and all this stuff within the company. And so every player actually gets free financial advice, free tax services, free money managers, like all this stuff is part of their NIL collective that they give the players free access to, which is insane. No other collective in the country does that. So they pay the taxes. Basically how it works is it's like you're like what me and you are, like what is it called? The 1099 is essentially what they are. And so they'll pay their taxes when they report their income this time every year.
Yep.
And then they just send that income over to the company, and then they do their taxes for them. It's insane.
Yep. Let's go ahead and abolish the IRS, Elon, so we don't have to worry about that no more. Unfortunately, there are only a handful of 315-pound athletic freaks in every class. When we win more, we'll be in the hunt for those recruits. If smaller, faster is how we get there, and so be it. Yeah. And
Belden Stone's coming in this weekend. He's one of those.
He is without a doubt. Now Ohio has a bill in their legislature to make NIL and other pay to be state tax-free, which is brilliant if you can pull it off.
Yep, that'd be huge.
Texas tax-free state. Get them hands up now. They're going to pass over him. Rashawn, I'm behind, fellas. It's all right, man. My apologies, training with the younger generation at the moment. No need to apologize at all. I'm actually wish I was getting my training in right now, but no, I appreciate you being on here listening. Wistrom and let's see, Wistrom talking about going around 240, 250 at defensive ends. Were they 240, 250 really?
Well, that was also in 1997 and 1998.
No, strength and conditioning's come a long way, but 240. I mean, 240 around then sounds about right. Yeah,
I'm gonna Google it real quick.
I
can also ask Grant.
240 build
him on the show.
There any large, as with any large wad of money, there's always ways to avoid the taxes, particularly when there's education involved. Exactly, Pitt Snipe. Yeah, get them in trouble with the IRS. Let's do that.
Grant Wistrom was 6'5", 260.
260. Okay,
it's pretty big.
That's a big old guy. Yeah, that's still massive for back then.
Yeah, it is.
6'5", 260. All right, so let's see. Let's go back through anything else that they talked about. That he did talk about Dion too, and the practicing against the other team thing. Doesn't seem like Matt Rule thinks that's going to be something that's going to happen. And from what it sounds like, he didn't come out and say it, but he started to. I felt like anytime soon.
I think what you should do would be like call South Dakota State and say, hey, on April 23rd, whenever the spring game is, do you guys want to come to Lincoln? We'll pay you $200,000 and just have a scrimmage. And the problem with doing this is if Nebraska lost that game, people are going to freak out.
Oh yeah.
Because Nebraska would play their starters for like 2 or 3 series. It'd be like a preseason game. They'll play 2 or 3 series, and then your second and third and fourth and fifth strings are going to come in. And then if they lose somehow, then everyone's going to be like, oh my gosh, we're screwed.
Yep.
That's the scary part about doing it.
Yes. And like, I just think he was talking about how like there's so much regulation with every change that needs to be made. Just think about how many logistical hoops they would have to go over to make that happen, to make sure that like, okay, this team has to play on this weekend, this team has to play on this weekend and make all these rules within that. I don't think it's something that's feasible. And I think that's something that he doesn't think is going to happen anytime soon either, is what it kind of seemed like.
Yeah. He said, I don't know if anyone can do it, Coach Sanders can, but he did say it is outside the current rules. So you have to go through a whole bunch of legislation to get this through, and no one's going to do this right as every program is starting spring ball.
Want to deal with it? Absolutely not. No. And but we're starting to see more and more like, some people are canceling their spring practices. Some people are having them and not televising them. We saw that. I forget who a couple schools did that where they're just not televising them. So really interesting to see kind of how everything's followed along on that path in terms of how the spring game's gone. What were you gonna say?
Yeah. What's stopping a coach? Like, let's say you're Nebraska and I'm Kansas State. What's stopping me from buying a ticket for somebody to go to your spring game and watch and take notes?
That's a lot of effort, I feel like.
Yeah, Michigan did risk.
Yeah. Michigan. I mean, Michigan had a guy in there who wrote a whole manifesto.
Oh man, did you watch that documentary?
Oh yeah,
it's insane.
Oh yeah, we just need a Stallions. That's the trick. We just
Yep.
need a Stallions. We almost lost to San Diego State in like 2011 or so. Taylor Martinez was a freshman.
Yep. So
Remember
almost
that.
lost to McNeese when Amir Abdullah. God, that run was
Speak
nuts.
of the devil, so I'm from Beaumont, Texas, which is where this Lamar University is, which is the university I went to after the military for a couple of years. McNeese is their biggest rival. So had we lost that McNeese game, it would have been tenfold worse for me because I'm around a bunch of people who went to McNeese or back home or go to McNeese or went to McNeese. So yeah, that was a whole different level of stress for me in that Amir Abdullah McNeese play there. We're not having a spring game, but we're going to let the entire opposing staff have access to our lads in joint practices.
Yeah, exactly.
That didn't make sense to me either because I'm just like, I thought he was going to shut it down whenever they asked a question because what's the difference? You know what I'm saying? Whether we're playing against a different team, whether playing against ourselves, it's the same thing. People are going to you're still going to have the same problem with people coming on and offering your players. You know, you'll have this person stand out all of a sudden. And it's almost even more eyes on it now because now you have fans of another team watching, you know, and it's like we're all going to be watching these games as if they're college football. I'm not sitting there watching every spring game, but if it was against another team, I might peek on them. You know what I'm saying? So you're going to get more eyes on it.
Yeah, the idea makes no sense to me. It would be fun if there was actual penalties for tampering, but there will never be penalties for tampering. So
negative.
It makes zero sense.
Exactly. Agreed. Was there anything else in the press conference that you wanted to dive over?
I really liked. They asked Marquise Buford about the receivers, and he spoke very highly of them. Which I think for us, like when you're talking about 3 of your 4 top receivers are all transfers, like we think we know what we have, but now you're hearing a guy who's been a starter for the last 2 years come out, and he's saying that these guys are freaks. They're incredibly fast. They're athletic. They're physical. They're big. All these different things. It was just kind of like a reassurance to what we think we're seeing when we watch these transfers like Dane Key or Hunter play.
Exactly. And I think it just kind of reinforces kind of what we talked about before, just how confident we are in this receiving core of this year, you know. So that is
I'm very confident. I think they're going to be freaks.
Oh, they're going to be excellent. They're going to be excellent for sure. Anything else in there that they talked about that you want to touch on?
Oh no, I'm good. I just saw a bunch of comments come through. We could probably wrap up with those.
Well, I'm about to run through some of the comments here. So let's see. There's always voice access. Let me see. Where was I at? I need to start marking these. There are some schools that will do scenarios such as with other teams gives both teams a chance to do things they can improve on in an isolated environment. Yeah, there's some. I kind of like a joint practice, kind of, you know, maybe run some one-on-ones, but even joint practices alone without like a scrimmage, that would require so many, you know, hoops to jump through, and then you got coaches interacting with your players too on top of it. Like, it's just, most of Husker Nation doesn't know Tony Alford wanted us to come. To come there. Tony Alford, the Michigan, the former Michigan or the Michigan running back coach that left Ohio State.
They were leaving when they left Nebraska after a camp. They were going up to Michigan, I believe, is what he said.
That's what you're talking about. Okay, gotcha. Yeah.
Talking about his son, Makai.
Yeah, Makai. Yep. Tony Alford was over at Ohio State. For those of you that don't know, left to go over to Michigan, which is it's a sin right there. But yeah, it's good to know. They block. See you guys on April 26th. I learned about the recruitment late. Actually, that's interesting to know. Tony Alford, I was like, I haven't heard that name in a minute since my Big Ten show. But shout out to Mark Manning and the Husker wrestling team, 2 national champions at a top 3 finish. Yeah, we talked about them earlier on in the show. Excellent performance overall by them. Great, just a great weekend for any fan of wrestling overall, just with how much, press it got, how much, Gable Stevenson, of course, losing, put a big amount of eyes on it. But then, it's just storyline. Penn State with over 170 points. You have Nebraska coming in with multiple national champions, and Gable Stevenson losing, and in the national championship. Just a wild wrestling weekend. One fastest man in MVP. Really, that is Definitely wasn't me. Definitely wasn't me winning fastest man.
How
about you, Brian?
Mackay?
Yeah, Mackay.
Oh, me?
Yeah,
No.
Mackay.
I was talking about this with some guys at work the other day, like 40 times. We used to run them in high school. And that was like my peak athletic abilities was high school, and like maybe like till I was like 20, 21.
Yeah.
And I ran like a 4.7, which is terrible for someone like me, I guess. Like that's terrible. It's 6'2", 180 pounds probably, and I could only run a 4.7.
Was this whenever Mackay was getting recruited? That is talking about in the recruitment process. Okay, I wasn't sure if this was like after he was already this past season when he was at Michigan, but interesting. Okay, that is good.
Our last live show, if people go back to it, he and I were going back and forth. He was kind of informing.
I know.
He said like how his recruitment stuff went. So it was interesting to learn about it.
He goes, Mackay did not us. Yeah, it definitely wasn't me. No, but yeah, just in general, when it comes to, I think a lot of these, one of the things too, that I like to, when I bring players on and stuff like that, is learning a lot of these nuances about this recruiting stuff like that. A lot of these behind the scenes stuff, like even just little stuff like that. Like a lot of people don't know Tony Alford wanted them to come there. Like those little things, we were talking about it before. We're trying to get, information on recruiting and for this upcoming season, how close to the vest. They've kept everything in general with recruiting and how much, how much slower paced everything has been because they're keeping everything close to the vest. And that's a good point of that, is like, there are so many small details about the nuances, stuff that we don't even know. Learned about recruitment in his 11th grade year. That's very interesting. Very interesting. It's good to it's nice to hear the insight, because like I'm talking about, it's just one of those things where it's like, we're not getting a lot of insight into recruiting. We're not getting a lot of insight into a lot of the stuff going on right now. Matt Rule's keeping everything very, very close to the vest. And so it's making this offseason a little bit more interesting, but a lot more fun to try to dive into and see what information we can find for sure. Reclass to 25, then back to a 24. Okay, that was right. Yeah, I remember that now. Reclassified. Yeah. 25, 24, and then see, I thought I was fast. I had my white defensive back moment in summer football. Can't focus on baseball from there out. So what you're trying to say is you did not get recruited to Iowa, because that's the only place you can go be a successful white defensive back. Okay.
Yep.
That's nice. You know the rules. Okay. You get your ass into the linebacker room ASAP. No, but I just had no hands when I played football, so that's why I played defense. Went to a small school, Wilkes-Barre, PA. Coaches wouldn't push his film. I wonder, that's kind of wild, because we just went over Mackay's stats out of PA. Both out of, what was the other one? Connecticut and PA, right?
Well, I believe he transferred to a prep school in Connecticut, and then that's when Nebraska kind of came into play.
Yep.
And he was like, well, I'm just going to reclassify back to 2024.
Yep.
So I don't think he actually played at a prep school. He was there though.
He was there, yeah.
Mr. Nelson confirmed that.
The wild. The coaches wouldn't push his film. I guess that worked out for Nebraska, because Nebraska ended up with him. But that's kind of wild. But it just goes to show why we talked about how under recruited he was, and in general with just like his numbers. You look at the numbers, you look at everything. It's like, why wasn't that those are normally the numbers you'd see from a 4-star plus recruit.
Especially in Pennsylvania.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Especially out of Pennsylvania.
He was a consensus 3-star. Right? I think On3 had him like as like 1100th overall.
I go 24/7, but I think they had him as a high 3. But
yeah, everyone pretty much was. He was not a 4-star, and he was not a 2-star. He was just mid 3 or high 3. But running back's such a hard position to recruit too. I mean,
oh yeah.
You got to keep in mind, like a guy like Connor Booth running for like 3,000 yards, and he plays Class C2 Nebraska. Like, you're gonna look good if you're playing Class C2.
Yes, without a doubt. Forced him to play quarterback in 9th grade. Couldn't camp as a running back, and that's another thing too. Camps like Fedoni. We talked about Fedoni's recruitment process. One of the things that kept him from being a 5-star was a lot of people were talking about was camps, because like too with camps, those actually prop up, those would be the difference between a 4-star and a 5-star. If you got a guy who's on the fringe and they evaluate these two people the same, you have one doing camps and the other one isn't, they're going to bump that one guy up to a 5-star that they're getting the visibility on and stuff like that too. Like all of those little details go into recruiting rankings.
There's a lot of political stuff too with it.
It's exactly why it's not an exact science. Special teams will make the biggest jump this season.
They have to.
They really do. Yeah, we're talking about Mekhi Nelson. Yes, sir. Not
I
Spelman.
messaged him on Twitter or X or whatever, but it's spring ball, so I'm not expecting to hear anything back from any player for at least a month or two.
For a little while, yeah, for sure. Just know he can throw and kick. Hey,
okay, so we can line him up at.
We got a Swiss Army knife. We got a Swiss Army knife out there. Nah, supremely talented though. If they put him at a quarterback in ninth grade,
you could do a hell of a fake field goal with him too.
Yeah,
he could be the kicker, then the holder could pitch it over his head like on the video game, and then Mekhi could catch it and run it, and then just drop it right over a defender.
Let's do that. Honestly,
it'd be fairly obvious if fake was happening if he was lined up at kicker.
Honestly, I just want to see a lot of. I want to see him roll out and do a fake pass. I want to see a running back pass. I don't know why.
Oh, yeah.
But I want to see a running back pass touchdown.
Hasn't been since Rex Burkhead.
Rex Burkhead was the last one, right? I think it was Rex.
Either him or Amir.
And I don't know why, but like for some reason, I want to see that again. Every year, that is the one thing I'm rooting for, and I've not gotten it in so long. Rashawn, are you his uncle? I believe Rashawn's his dad. Are you gentlemen coming in for any home games this season? Yes, sir, Mike. I will be there. I will be there. Not sure which game or games. My family, every year we go out there for, most of my family lives out there, but every year we travel up there for a game where everybody's kind of out there. And we went to the Colorado game last year. So I'll be out there for at least one home game this year. So I'll be sure to let y'all know which game that is going to be.
I usually go to like 5 or 6 between the season tickets we have, but with us doing post-game lives, I'll probably maybe do 1 or 2, just because it's doing post-game live when you're leaving a town with 200,000 people in it and 90,000 are leaving the same area. It's going to be kind of hard with self-service, I imagine.
Yeah, for sure. He has film throwing a dot. I need to find some quarterback film. Do they have that? I wonder if they got that on Huddle. Oh, why did my camera go off? I wonder if they got that on Huddle. If not, Rashawn, I don't know if you got X. If you want to follow me on X, _H Husker, and if you can send me some of that, if you got it, that'd be awesome. That is his dad. Yes, sir. Glad to have you. Yes, sir. Always happy to have you. Fedoni's dad, was a fan of the show too. So, and speaking of Fedoni, they had their pro day. Those guys had their pro days. Did you get a chance to check any of it out? I saw they had the live stream going.
I watched some of, they're doing, ironically, Nebraska's former wide receiver coach / OC was the coach doing the routes with the receivers and tight ends. Because he's what was his name? I forget his name. He was here for Frost, but they had one where they were running like a fake fade and then they were doing a comeback route, basically coming back to the pylon.
Yeah.
And Dylan was throwing them so that they had to like make a tough catch,
every
single throw. And Fedoni, like full extension, went out and caught it, kept his feet in bounds. It was a beautiful catch.
Looking awesome. He's looking good. I peeked on there for a little bit of it. Watched what I could of it, but I like how they did stream that too. That was interesting to get a look in there and see a little bit of that for sure. I'll send you some stuff. All right, man. I appreciate you. Thank you so much, man. Awesome. Great day, man. Yeah, take care. And you got fans in us and Mekhi now too. Ever since I mispronounced his name that one day, bro, I'm like, listen, I'm not gonna let myself live that down. Now I'm Mekhi's biggest fan going forward. So I'm rooting for him a lot, and appreciate you always rocking with the show, being a fan of the show, Rashawn. Appreciate that a lot, and appreciate everybody else who hops in here every Tuesday with us and joins us on the show. March Madness is going on. My bracket is terrible. I feel like March Madness this year has been very anticlimactic. Would you agree?
Yeah, I surprisingly though have not. I haven't checked our bracket for this channel, but my work bracket, I got, I think 36 right in the first 2 rounds, which was pretty solid. It's
the worst I've ever done this year, and it will
usually partially upsets like crazy, and there's none.
None of mine. Yeah, because literally, like I predicted McNeese, but that was. Like none of the other ones went through, and one of my I filled my bracket out like the night before, like really late at night, and so like if you see blank bracket, there's a blank bracket. It's because my second bracket I forgot to save the picks, and so like I only have one bracket on there, and it's doing horror.
Did we get a lot of entries in there?
We had a decent amount. We got a solid amount. So I was thinking maybe doing a $50 gift card for the winner.
That'd be nice.
So that way we can send a little $50 gift card out to the winner for people hopping in there and joining our bracket challenge. Yeah, who's in the lead right now?
I'm trying to find it.
Let's see. Hold on.
We go.
I got it right here. And trying to figure out who everybody is in the actual brackets themselves. But I do have, well, you got the same champion as me. You picked my Houston Cougars, bro, and Michigan State in the final.
Yeah, I have Houston in one and Florida the other. Husker Power JJR is in the lead. He is actually, yeah, he's got 10-point lead on who's Klossborn, and then I'm in third.
All right. So whoever those two people are up front, let us know if that's you in the comments of a video or anything too, because we need to figure out who's who so we can send the
how are we going to figure this out?
send the award out. No, we'll figure it out. Whoever wins will respond up. It's $50. They're gonna say something. Trust me.
Definitely
$50. So, all right. Well, anything else before we conclude here, Brian?
No, we are good. We'll probably do the one thing this week actually is we'll probably do kind of like a synopsis of the first week of spring practice. So that'll come out probably Friday afternoon at some point once I get all the stuff in.
Cool. Yep. And yeah, we'll have some more content come for y'all, especially as we're getting back into football. Now we got some more stuff coming out, some more news coming out. So content's going to be ramping up. Recruiting news coming on. Hell yeah, football. Let's go. T. That's what I'm talking about. Just followed you on X. I appreciate it, Rashawn. Thank you so much, man. So yeah, we are ramping up the content. We got some recruiting stuff coming for y'all. We're going to have some film stuff coming for y'all as well as we get into the spring practices here or into a little bit more into spring ball and start to really kind of get moving towards the season. So but yeah, with that being said, everybody, if you have not yet, drop a like on the stream. It really helps us out. Drop a comment. Subscribe to the channel if you have not yet. Every Tuesday, 6 p.m. Central, we will be here live with you, bringing everything home and video content coming throughout the week. Got a lot of fun stuff planned for y'all coming up. I'll drive in just a couple of your comments. William, great show. Thanks. I appreciate that. William, thank you for hopping in here. Great night. Make sure you guys get to a padded practice. Watch the future. Hey, yes, sir. Absolutely. Y'all get out there to those practices for sure. Go Big Red. All right, everybody. Well, with that being said, thank y'all for tuning in, and I will see you on the next video. Peace.